I think it's pretty safe to say that the month of January is shaping up to be one of the best winter patterns that we've seen for the eastern half of the US in quite a long time. After a disappointing warm winter last year, we are seeing signs finally that winter is here to stay, at least for the month of January for the eastern half of the US, as an extended period of cold and snow looks to dominate. There's a lot of clickbait out there, a lot of hype posts, a lot of pretty color maps to look at. But we're going to try to avoid all that, but also give you the facts of what to expect here for this pattern. This is a Michigan based channel, but it also applies to the Midwest and perhaps Northeast as well, as the same pattern is expected across much of the United States. Let's go ahead and dive in. Bear with me. I'm going to talk about a very important piece of information here, but we're going to try and break this down into bite-sized pieces to not confuse you guys. We're going to try and get things squared away here in as quick amount of time and as simple as possible. Let's go ahead and dive in. Starting with the Arctic oscillation. The Arctic oscillation is a measure of pressure up in the Arctic region of the world. When we have two phases here. We have a positive phase, we have a negative phase. This graph here, go ahead and take this full screen. This graph is for the next about 15 or so days, starting at the very bottom, December 30th, which is today, and it ends January 14th, which is Tuesday. In the middle here, we have a 0. That's your neutral phase. That's your black line going across the middle of the graph. Anything below this black line is a negative phase. Anything above this black line is a positive phase. The Arctic oscillation is forecasted to go negative throughout the month of January, at least the first half of it at least, but likely beyond. Why that's important is the negative phase of the Arctic oscillation is a higher pressure dome up there in the Arctic region, and that will in turn shift the cold air and also the active jet stream further to the south into the US. Whereas a positive phase would keep that cold air and that jet stream locked up into Canada, and it'll be keeping us warmer. Okay? That is very important here. What that kind of looks like on the map is something like this. This is the overall jet stream positioning that we're kind of expecting here throughout the first half of January, likely beyond that into the later half as well. The jet stream will cut into the western US, dive into the middle part of the US, and then cut back north into the northeast half. What that does is north of that jet stream, it keeps things cold. And on the southern side of that, it keeps things a bit near average, or if you're in the western half of the US toward California, Arizona, Nevada, you're going to be warmer than average. What that also does is keeps us in the active storm track pattern. Because that cold air is locked up there firmly in the Midwest region, any active pattern along that jet stream, systems like low pressure systems, shortwave, stuff like that ripple through will be cold enough for snow across much of the Midwest and the Northeast. So having that jet stream that's going to dive south is going to help us stay active and also help us stay cold. So we're not going to look at rain systems, we're going to look at snow systems instead. That's your general guideline here, what we're kind of expecting for January. Let's go ahead and break things down a bit further. Looking at the European model, we're going to see our temperature guidance. There's been a lot of sharing of Arctic air cold blasts, below zero wind chills. And I will say, yes, models are showing that, but it's maybe overdone slightly. Let's go ahead and dive into this. This is a European model here. Go ahead and take this back full screen for you guys. This is a European model that goes out to right around the middle of January. This is your Arctic air moving in to the US. Let's go ahead and break this down here and run this through the time frame. So your graph to correlate temperatures at the very bottom of your screen. It might be hard to see for you guys, but I'll help you out. So right now, currently today, we're seeing these lighter blue and blue colors in Michigan. That correlates to roughly 30 to 40 or so degrees down here on this graph. Okay, well, let's go ahead and run this through the time frame here. As we get later into the month, let's go ahead and bring it up to like January or so. We're going to see that cold air from Canada start to penetrate south. This is January 2nd here. Moving up to January 3rd. Here comes your below zero temperatures into the U.S. Places like Minnesota, perhaps Wisconsin, the western UP of Michigan, the Dakotas, Montana, those areas. We'll be seeing Arctic air likely below zero. This is January 4th, continuing this into the time frame. Got back up 1 mile run. There we go. Continue this into the middle part of January. That cold air continues to dominate and also penetrate further to the south here, finally penetrating further into the Ohio Valley, perhaps right around the January 10th time frame. Now, this is your apparent this is your actual surface temperature, not your apparent temperature, which is also known as wind chill. So this is your actual surface temperatures here, and anything you see in this white gray color is 0 or below. So a very, very cold air mass here is expected to move in. Regardless if it's 0, -15, or 5 degrees, it's going to be cold. The exact temperature will likely be in the single digits for high temperatures for a short period of time around that 10th of January timeframe. Will we see below zero temperatures? Probably. Honestly, at some point, it's probably likely. But overall, I think we should be more concerned about the wind chill. If I switch this over to apparent temperature, check that out. Go ahead and scroll down here to the very bottom graph here. We're seeing these really bright aqua, we're going to call bright white or aqua color there across much of the Midwest region. Correlating that down here to our graph, that is -30 below for your wind chill. That is very cold temperatures. So what I'm trying to communicate here is it's going to be cold. But if we just kind of back this up back to the temperature, keep an eye on the entire eastern half of the US here. We're cold. I mean, even the red colors here are, 10, 20, mid 20s or below essentially is what we're looking at throughout the month of January for the first 15 days. So either way, whether it's going to be -15 or 15 above, it's going to be cold. So exacts are not known. It will be cold regardless. So do prepare for that throughout the first 15 days of January, especially the worst of it being shown right around that January 8th to January 11th or 12th timeframe. Okay. Now, checking out a few other things to go along with temperatures, we do have guidance from the Climate Prediction Center, known as CPC, 6 to 10 day period below average for the eastern half. Surprise, surprise. And also notice throughout these outlooks I'm about to show you, that jet stream pattern we showed you guys kind of correlates well with our temperature outlooks. The western half stays above average, the eastern half stays below average in terms of temperatures here. So a pretty similar pattern we're seeing with confidence increasing. So that's between January 4th and January 8th. 8 to 14 day continues that exact same pattern with a very high probability of below temperatures in the eastern half, from the Ohio Valley down to Florida, even below average. The 3 to 4 week pattern going into later January looks to be also below average. Speaking of which, going into the future, the extended models here, this is where things get a little bit more tricky in terms of forecasting. For your temperatures, we're going to see the green color, blue colors there below average, and the warmer colors like the yellows and reds on the left side or in the top right of your screen are the above average temperatures. Moving this through the time frame here, this is your Arctic blast coming in for that January 10th-ish time frame, but notice how that will fade, but we still stay on the colder side throughout the last half of January. This model for this time where I stopped it is the last week of January 20th to the 27th to be exact with you guys, and we're seeing the eastern US still within that cold below average temperature pattern. So the worst of the cold will be centered around the middle part of January, but the whole entire month will trend below average before a switch back to likely above average for some time in February. This model right here keeps us cold throughout the first half of February, but at that time frame, we're not confident in that occurring at all. So the overall takeaway I want to cover for January is very cold. The coldest is centered, we're going to say, between January, we'll say 7th to about the 12th or 13th or so. For a 4 or 5 day period there will be the very coldest part of the month. Now, here comes the fun part. Because that jet stream from the Arctic oscillation that shifts south is centered over the US, that's going to keep us quite active in terms of systems. Here is the GFS model here for you guys throughout the next 384 hours to be exact. Now, the short term, we have pretty good confidence in, but the long term, it's just a general idea of an active pattern. So don't get your hopes up. You see yourself in a bunch of snow here. It's a pattern. It's not an exact forecast just yet. Going through the time frame here, we have a system passing through on Tuesday. We're going to cover that here at MSC a little bit later on today. That could bring some snow for southern Michigan. Not expected to be a huge deal. The first big system we're tracking is going to start developing off to our west here right around the weekend time frame, Saturday or Sunday. We're going to see a couple things come together here. We're going to see a system really start to ramp up right about here, we're seeing all this moisture convergence in the US here. That's going to become our next system to watch for Sunday and Monday of next week. Where that tracks, whether it goes north here through Michigan, south here through Dixie Alley, or just takes a complete nor'easter type of track is yet to be seen. But overall, I would look to the next weekend time frame for our first of many systems that could work through. This is January 5th, which is Sunday. That system will track through. Could bring some snow for parts of the Midwest, perhaps the Northeast as well. Likely mean rain for Dixie Alley down there in the deep South and perhaps the Carolinas. But that's our first system to watch here towards the next weekend time frame. Beyond that, we're going to see lake effect snow kick up for this week, but also next week as well. So a prolonged period of lake effect snow likely for Michigan and parts of New York, Pennsylvania, and Ohio as well. As we get through the later half of the January 8th timeframe, we're seeing that active pattern continue with lake effect snow here, but also more systems developing off here to the west that will move through. Another system here is shown to go through the deep south here with snow in the Ohio Valley, and also continuing that even further into the future, that takes a northeast track and it slams the northeast with a lot of snow. Now, again, is it going to happen? Maybe, but when we're at this range of models, it's just an idea. It's not a forecast, but the overall idea of an active pattern continues throughout the first half of January with more snow behind that developing for the Great Lakes. All I'm trying to say here is we're going to be pretty active throughout the entire month of January, especially our confidence is high in that in the first 15 days of the month. So cold, active, likely snowy if you're in the Midwest and Northeast portion. If you're in the deep South watching, it'll likely mean rain, perhaps severe weather for you guys in the deep South with these systems, especially if we can get a Colorado low to kind of track a little bit further to the south there. We could definitely see some severe weather chances for like Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia areas, perhaps to Tennessee as well. But overall pattern is active and cold. So I hope that kind of breaks things down for you guys. Yes, it'll be cold. Yes, it'll be snowy, but we're used to this here. Let's remember, we're all Midwesterners watching us. Well, not maybe, perhaps you're not Midwestern, but most of us here in the Midwest, we're used to snow. We're used to our cold in wintertime. Do we like it? Maybe not, but we're used to it. All right, so nothing major here in terms of the overall pattern being anything unusual. No, this is typical winter. It's here. It's coming. Be prepared. Be ready for it. And that's all I can say to you guys. We'll have you guys covered as we track these individual systems as we get higher confidence in them occurring. So stay with us here at MSC. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to hit the like button on the bottom of your screen and click the subscribe button if you would like to be updated in terms of future weather events here in Michigan. With that being said, you guys take it easy. I'll catch you guys next time at Michigan Storm Chasers.